Hi, 7th grade. Today we are doing section 6.2 in your book, and we are going to be comparing and ordering fractions and decimals. Fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, so this section is actually very easy. Go grab this graphic organizer. You can write the word comparing in the middle. And basically what I'm planning on doing for this graphic organizer is just to show you how you can turn everything back into something similar. So what I mean by that is, what if I gave you a huge list of fractions, decimals, and percents all mixed up together, and I wanted you to order them or compare them to tell me like who's bigger than who? The best thing to do is to change all of them into the same thing, okay? So what I mean by that is, if you like comparing percents better, then change everything into a percent. If you like comparing decimals better, then change everything to a decimal. Fractions, if you like doing fractions, yeah, turn them all into fractions. The big thing we need to remember here, though, is that not all fractions turn to percents as easily when you like trying to change them into 100, right? So maybe for the first example, we can just do a couple turning a group of numbers into the same thing. So let me go ahead and flip through the book. I'm on page 222 on 6.2, and I'm looking for just like a group of numbers. Okay, so I found a group. I'm going to go ahead and start up here. So up here, I'm going to write 38%, and then a comma, and then I'm going to do 8 over 25. Now, this example, that 25 right there, is a pretty easy one to turn into a 100. So this example is going to be one of those ones where it's like, it doesn't matter what you choose, everything will be easy, right? And then the last number is 0.41. Okay, so step 1 is change everything into like things. So if you like percents, do percents. You like fractions, do fractions. You like decimals, do decimals. I personally like turning things into percents just because it's pretty easy for my brain to understand percentages, you know. So what I would do is draw an arrow below everything and rewrite it. So 38% is still going to be 38%. 8 over 25. Now 25 is very easy to turn into 100. We would multiply both of them by 4. So 8 times 4 is 32. That would be 32 over 100, which is 32%. And then 0.41, is just 41%. If I move that decimal 2 places, right? Now, because I changed them to percents, it's pretty easy for me to order them now from least to greatest. So now I'm going to do that. Who is the least? 32%, but I'm going to put it back into its original format, right? So 32% is going to go over here. He's going to be the smallest. So I'm going to say 8 over 25, comma. Then next would be the 38%, and he was just 38%. And then this one can come down here as 0.41. Okay, so this whole lesson is just making sure that you guys know how to go back and forth for everything. Like, you should be able to turn a percent into a decimal into a percent, a fraction into a decimal, a fraction into a percent. You can change it, though, to what you think is easier. Let's go do another example over here with a bunch of random. Let's do a tough one, yeah? Let's do 2.62. See how I'm writing it small? There's going to be quite a few. 2 2/5. 26.8%. 2.26. And 271%. Okay, so like I said, take a different color, draw an arrow, and change them now into the same things. Like I said, I like percents better, honestly. My brain can handle percentages and decimals better than fractions, I guess. But I also think that turning things into percents is very easy. So 2.62, what is that as a percent? Well, to go from a decimal to a percent, we learned yesterday that we move it over 2 places, right? To the right. So 2.62 is 262%. Now, 2 2/5. Let's change that 5 into 100 pretty easily, right? If I want this to be 100, I would multiply it by 20. So I'd multiply this by 20. 20 times 2 is 40. So it'd be 2 and 40 over 100. Now what we learned is that whole number right here is actually in the hundreds column, right? So like that would be like this 2 right here. So I'm going to write this as the 2 for the 200. And then I had 40 over 100, so that would just be 240%. Okay, hopefully that made sense. I know I used it with the laser pointer that disappears, so it's kind of confusing. But once again, I just multiplied both of these by 20, and that gets me 40 over 100, but I still have that 2 out there, so that 2 becomes the hundreds place. The 40 just pops down in there. 240%. Now this one's already in a percent. A lot of kids will mess up and try to move that decimal over 2 places, but this is already 26.8%. It's a little guy compared to the rest, isn't it? The next one is not a percent, so I'm going to move it over 2 places to the right. That would be 226%. Don't get that confused with 262%. And then the last one is a percent as well, so we just get to leave it 271%. Now I'm still ordering these in order from least to greatest. So the smallest percentage I have is very blatantly obvious. It's just 26.8%. So I'm going to rewrite that over here and back into its original format, which was just 26.8%. He's smallest. The next smallest, now I'm going to compare these. I've got 226 is smallest. So that would be 2.26, was not a percent. The next smallest would be 240, which originally was 2 2/5. Next is 2.62, that was the 262%. And then the last one is the 271%. Now I like to turn things into percentages. That does not mean you guys have to turn them into percentages. Could I have turned these into decimals just as easily? Yes, I could have. To do that real quick, this one already is a decimal. That's great. This one would have been 2.40 because it was, 40 over 100. This one, this is where kids make so many mistakes. Even though there's a decimal inside the percent, it's still not a decimal. You got to get rid of that percent sign, right? So you would still move it 2 places to the left. So this would be 0.268. This one is already 0.26, and then this one you move it over 2 places, it would be 2.71. So if you want to change them as to decimals, perfectly fine. I don't know very many people that change these into fractions, but if that's you, go for it. Not me. That's definitely not my favorite thing to do. But now for these last 2 examples, let's just do something kind of simple. Let's go ahead and say, tell which number is greater. Okay, I'm just going to give you 2 of them and you tell me which one is greater, okay? Let's do 0.9 and 95%. Which one is greater? Well, the best way to compare is to change them to be the same things. I know that 0.9, if I change that to a percent, I would move this over 2 places, right? And that would get me 90%. So now I can compare those very easily because they're both percents, right? Or I could change this into a decimal by moving its decimal place 2 places this way, so that would be 0.95. Now once again, 0.9, which is the same thing as 0.90. 90 is smaller than 95, so you could compare them that way. Now, could I compare them by turning them into fractions? Yes, it's just, not my favorite. This would be 9 over 10. Or if I put that 0 there, it turns into 90 over 100, right? And then this would just be 95 over 100. But once again, very easy to see who's bigger, right? 95 is bigger than 90. So I'm going to go and erase all of these markings. And I want you guys to choose which way you like best to compare these. I personally like changing this into a percent. This would be 90%. And this is 95%. So now I can see 95% is bigger. So I don't care which way you guys do it, but make sure at the very end you tell me which one was bigger. All right, and then this last one, let's go ahead and compare again. Let's say, instead of which one's bigger, let's say which number is smaller. Okay, and let's have our two numbers be, gosh, how about we do 1/3 and 30%. Okay, this is a great example of when the fraction doesn't turn into like 100 very easily. 3 times nothing nice gets you 100 perfectly, right? So I think the best way to compare these two would be actually to leave it like this. Or you could divide. You could say 3 and 1 like that and divide it and get a decimal and then turn that decimal into a percent, or leave it as a decimal and turn this into a decimal. It's totally up to you guys. When comparing fractions though, you have to compare them with the same denominator. And I really don't want to change this into a fraction that has a 3 in the denominator. That just seems sticky, icky. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of these into decimals. 30% as a decimal, you move it 2 places backwards, that would just be 0.3. And 1/3 is a decimal. Let's actually just do the math. 3 does not go into 1, so we put a decimal, add a new 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times, that would be 9, right? Subtract it, you get a 1, bring down a new 0. What are you noticing? Yeah, this is going to repeat, isn't it? Yep. And you'd bring down another 0. Okay, anyway, so we know it's 0.33333. But I want you to understand this. 0.3 with a hat is 0.33333. This guy over here is 0.3 with a 0. So technically, who's bigger? Is 30 bigger or is 33 bigger? Technically, 33 is bigger, correct? 0.33, that's 33 cents versus 30 cents. So in my question up here, though, I'm asking which number is smaller in this case. So who is smaller? 30% is smaller. Okay, so my final thing that I want you guys to get out of this is that you need to change them. You need to change them so that they're all the same thing, and then you can compare them. I don't care if you change them to percents, decimals, or fractions, whatever is easier for you. And then also another thing you need to remember is to put it back into its original format when you finally get an answer, right? So you can change them to compare them, but then you've got to make sure that you've, put them back to how they looked before. Okay, so thank you for watching this. I now am going to tell you what your exit ticket is, so this will be a great way for me to tell who actually watched it all the way through. Here's your exit ticket at the bottom. I'm going to go and zoom in like this. Okay, so exit ticket. This is for 6.2. Exit ticket 6.2. All right, so grab an exit ticket paper, write that at the top, and your name. Don't forget your name. Here is your question. I want you to order from least to greatest. Okay, I'm just going to give you one problem. Let's do 87 over 200, comma, 0.44, comma, 43.7%, comma, and 21 over 50. Now this is a nice one because do these two fractions turn into 100 very easily? Yes, they do. I would multiply both of these ones by 2 to turn them into 100, and I would divide actually both of these ones by 2 to get that one to be 100. Now 87 doesn't really divide by 2 very nicely, but you'll get something. It'll work. You guys can do it. Or you could reduce. I mean, whatever you want to do. Or you could just straight down divide and turn it into a decimal. So you guys kind of work on that. This is your exit ticket. It is going to be worth 1, 2, 3, 4 points because there's 4 possible, answers in there. All right, guys, good luck. Make sure you turn them in when you're done and your name is on them. And I will see you guys when I get back.